Welcome to Compassionate Care Conversations. My name is Scott Bradley. I'm the owner of Bradley & Son Funeral Homes, serving Morris, Union, and Essex County, New Jersey, and SimpleCremationNJ.com, serving the whole state of New Jersey. I'm a third-generation funeral director, a clinical social worker, and a certified psychoanalyst. My mission here is to speak with people who improve the quality of life of the traumatized, the dying, and their stressed caregivers. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mary Robinson, my friend and an accomplished innovator in children's bereavement support. Mary, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
Tell us about yourself and what inspired you to work in the field of grief.
That's a great question. I think what inspired me to work in the field of grief, especially children's grief, was the death of my dad when I was 14. And this is 1974. There was no grief support back then for kids, and no understanding that kids needed support, and that they grieved. So my brother and I did not do well after our dad died. And so fast forward I was in my late 30s when I first discovered the world of children's grief support. I came across an organization called Rainbows, international nonprofit that provided support for grieving kids. And I was just really blown away by the fact that such a thing existed, that support for children was available, even though it hadn't been when my dad died. And I actually ended up leaving my corporate job at Prudential, where I'd been for 14 years, to work full-time in the field of children's grief. So I say, the work that I've done was really born out of the loss of my dad and not getting the support that I needed and my brother needed and our family needed.
I'd like to ask you a little bit of a personal question. You said something just a second ago that really intrigued me, and that is, you said after your dad died, you and your brother didn't do well. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Mm-hmm.
Well, I always say we were sad kids. We weren't bad kids, but we looked like we were bad kids because we acted out in ways typical of grieving children that don't get support. So if you observed our behavior, it changed a lot from before our dad got sick and died to after. My grades went down. I started skipping school. My brother got involved with drinking and drugs. He dropped out of school his senior year, yet not a single teacher, guidance counselor, my track coach, nobody said anything. So I always say, I personally, lost years of my life to unaddressed grief because it really turned into depression.
Right.
And I didn't know I was grieving. I knew I missed my dad. I knew I missed our life as it had been before he died. But I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know there was anything that could be done about it. And I was missing the key thing that helps grieving children. And we can talk more about this, which is the active presence of at least one caring, functional adult in their life who sees the child and gets it that their loss matters and is there for them. So I could say, well, my mom was there, but she was grieving. Yeah. She was working now 24/7 to support the family. She had been a stay-at-home mom. When my dad got sick, we had no medical insurance, so really wiped out financially, and she was just working all the time. And we were just left to our own devices, two surly teenagers, behaving our grief, and yet nobody said anything.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think we're going to build on this, and I think you have so much to offer the audience. So I think it was about the Rainbows time, and just a little after that is when you and I met. And I recall our first get-together was at a lunch where you encouraged me to work with you on a new children's bereavement support program you'd started. And at the same time, I encouraged you to join my Psychoanalytic Institute and do some training. And we both committed to helping each other out, and we've known each other ever since then. I got to say, I was so excited to hear your vision of supporting grieving children, because it was in sync with my social work training, my funeral service training, and my analytic training. And it was really desperately needed at the time. It still is. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing back then. I was running bereavement support groups for adults, and there was nowhere that I felt comfortable sending children and their families. So I couldn't wait to get involved in that program. Can you explain to the audience the basis for the support programs you started and your clinical way of working with individuals and groups?
Sure. So the basis for the support program, so what I did is have started 2 children's grief support centers, and you were really instrumental. That lunch was instrumental for 2 reasons, because you gave a really strong professional voice in support of the model that I wanted to implement, and you introduced me to clinical training, because I was a grieving kid, now an adult, who is going to start a nonprofit supporting grieving children and families, at the worst time in their lives. Yeah. But I wasn't a therapist or clinician, which was fine, and we can talk more about that too, really what children need when they're grieving. But the basis is bringing children together with other kids their same age and their parents. So it's a family model. So the whole family is getting support together, grieving together, communicating together. The kids find out that they're not alone, and they get that kind, caring, functional adult, because it's adults from the community, from all walks of life, who facilitate the support programs. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to provide a safe space where kids get to have all their feelings with no judgment, and find out they're not alone, find out there's other kids just like them who had a mom or a dad or a brother or sister die, and get to express themselves, get to hear from other kids, and without anyone trying to fix them or make it better or give advice. So all the volunteers, the adults in kids' life, so whether you're doing that at a children's grief support center or in your neighborhood, you can be that loving listener for grieving children by showing up and being present and lending your optimism to them, your listening and your presence, and letting, the child know that their loss matters and that you're there for them. And help them to tell their story and talk about it if they choose to.
Right.
And kids talk about it in all different kinds of ways. Little kids talk about it through play. So there's a lot of play that happens at these centers. That's children's work. Yeah. That's how they communicate symbolically to us what's going on, and as they get a little bit older, they use words more. Yeah. But the model it's really based on a model I found out in Portland, Oregon, and that's one of the ways you were really helpful. Is I brought in the director of that center to speak to the board that I was forming. Yeah. And you lent the professional advice from running funeral homes, but also your clinical experience, and validated that this was the model that was needed. Yeah. So
I was there.
You were there.
It was very impressive. I heard. I didn't hear one thing that you said about the caring adults that work with the kids, and that was give advice. So I just want to make that very clear, that I think one of the beauties of the program is to help the supportive, caring individuals who are working with the kids and the parents, surviving parents, is that we're not there to give advice and to channel them in any particular direction. It's really understanding where that person is and that child is, and let them do what they need to do and express to us what they need to get out.
Right.
So going back to what you said about your childhood, and is that in a way the 2 groups that you started frame an environment where you could act out, but in a way that helped acknowledge and identify your grief and mourning.
Right. Yes, you could behave your feelings like you're not really choosing to do that. It just happens naturally.
Yeah.
But now you're in an environment where people are listening to your behavior.
Yes.
Instead of saying, oh, you're bad and stop doing that, or your mom wouldn't want you to cry, or go to your room. No, you get to have all your feelings.
Yeah.
The sadness, the anger, the resentment, the relief. We have a cool room at these centers called the Volcano Room, where kids get to get physical and pound pillows and punch punching bags and rip up fabric and just discharge a lot of that kinetic energy that's in the body that comes along with intense emotion. And I always tell parents, you can do this at home. Set up a little corner, give them, a special pillow, and they can decorate the pillow, and that can be their anger pillow. It could be their comfort pillow. Give them phone books to rip up. Actually, we don't have phone books anymore, probably. Or, magazines, catalogs, fabric, bubble wrap to stomp on. So there's lots of things you can do in your own home.
Yeah. It's making me think of traumatization and so what do you think is at the root of traumatization from a loss?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I always say that, speaking about children, we can also speak about adults, that the death of a parent or a sibling, but especially a parent, is a trauma for a child.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to leave them traumatized.
Yes.
If they get support and if they get to tell their story, have their feelings, and they can tell their story through art and clay and play, and they don't have to sit in a room and talk to someone. But I think the root of traumatization is not mourning, is keeping your feelings bottled up inside, and not talking about it, not expressing it, not discharging it. So two people can experience the exact same trauma. One can be traumatized and not the other. Why is that? And there's a lot of factors, and it could be, you've had previous loss in your life that was never dealt with, or previous traumas. You haven't yet developed the coping skills or the problem-solving skills, or you don't have that caring adult or caring community to be there and support you and be a witness for you telling your story. It could be, adverse childhood experiences that leave you more vulnerable to traumatization. But the main thing is not talking, not mourning. To me, that's the basis for everything. I know you've heard me say so many times that I believe the world's driven by unaddressed grief, trauma. You walk into any 12-step meeting, any prison, any psych unit in any hospital, any therapist's office, any living room, and you'll hear nothing but stories of grief and loss. And from decades ago, in many cases, that was never processed, never mourned. And so we are traumatized when we don't express and process, ideally through language, what happened to us.
Yes.
Does that?
That's beautiful.
Sense?
It makes perfect sense. I guess I wanted to say, I hope we can make more environmental places that are environmentally safe for grieving people.
Yeah, Scott, that's the dream. And
I think one of the things I remember loving about the groups that you started and the organizations was generally in public, people do not like aggression and rage and anger. And I think a lot of loss and grief are those particular feelings. And when they can be expressed in a supportive environment, they don't get turned against the self, turned against others, I think so much good work can be done. And that's what happened at those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should name them, right?
Sure.
Good Grief and Imagine. One's in Springfield.
Morristown. Good Grief's in Morristown and Princeton, and Imagine is in Mountainside, New Jersey, and Newark.
Yep.
But when I first got into this field, I thought I want a center in every county in New Jersey. First, it was amazing to me that there was no Children's Grief Support Center in the most densely populated state in the country. No Children's Grief Support Center. There was a little program near Atlantic City. Yeah. Wonderful program. So, we needed them. We created them. And I thought we need one in every county because families are having to travel too far, whether that'll ever happen. But to your point, creating an environment that's safe for children and adults to grieve is really about changing how we view death and dying and grieving in our society, and helping people be less afraid of grievers. Yeah. Because they end up then being so isolated. Yeah. So we want to normalize it, which is one of the things these centers do. But you shouldn't have to have a center in your community to get support. So we want to create grief-informed communities, which is one of the things you're doing so beautifully, helping to happen by having more conversations and more education, and by educating adults that you can be that caring adult. You can change the course of a grieving child's life just by showing up. Yeah.
Leads me to my next question. Thank you. We are both clinicians, but not all of the work we do, like the support groups that you've started, might be therapeutic, but they're not therapy. So can you tell the audience what's the difference between grief support and grief therapy?
Sure. Yep. So both of these programs, Good Grief and Imagine, and all of the centers around the country just like them, there's around 500 now, are not therapy, but they're therapeutic. So, and the reason is, when someone dies, you don't need therapy typically. Right. It's actually, they say only 10% of bereaved people really need a therapy intervention. Right. And that's for a lot of reasons, like what was going on before the loss, pre-existing, mental health issues, prior losses never dealt with, it's just much more complicated. But really what you need is a loving community, a witness, more than one ideally, and a place to tell your story and find out you're not alone. So anyway, the difference between, griefs, the children's centers, and really even what I do in my practice with bereaved people, for the most part, I'm providing support because they're not coming to me for therapy. Most of them, their lives were fine before their partner of 50 years died, or the child's parent died, or we're doing fine. So what they really need is the opportunity to mourn. Yeah. And there's not a lot of opportunities for adults to mourn, unless you have kids and you can go to a grief support program and be with other parents. Yeah. And part of it is, to your point, people are uncomfortable with aggression and rage and all the intense feelings that come from grief. People get really uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about it, and they want to give you platitudes and make you feel better and say, well, they're in a better place now, and just all the things we say out of the best of intentions, thinking we're going to help the person. Right. The thing that helps is your presence and being with them, often without saying a word. In my practice, there's almost nothing I can say when a mom or a dad comes and their child has just died by suicide. My job is to help them tell their story. My job is to help them say everything. Yeah. So therapy is more about really working with people over a long period of time and providing interventions, being probably a little bit more, I'm not sure I would say directive. I mean, we as psychoanalysts, our job really is listening, helping people express all of their feelings, especially their aggression. So therapy is, I think I want to just clarify that a lot of times people will call me, especially if a child's parent has died, I have to get my kid into therapy, or I need therapy. And I help them understand, yes, please come to me, but let me first tell you about these grief support centers. And nothing's wrong. Grief is not pathological.
Right.
Nothing needs to be fixed. You just need an opportunity and space to process your grief and express it and not keep it bottled up inside.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get more into that in a second.
Okay.
Thank you.